woke up quick at about noon.
Hope you had a fantastic weekend. Welcome into the Monday, June 10th edition of the podcast with Damien Barling. I am Damien Barling, and I thank you so much for tuning in. I thank you so much for downloading, for streaming, whether you're on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, wherever you may be. We thank you so much for being here. There is plenty to discuss today. We've got a potential closeout game tonight in the NBA Finals. We'll get to that in just a minute. We've got the retirement. The Big Three in San Antonio is finally all finished. Tony Parker announced his retirement today. We'll touch on that a little bit later on. We've got NFL news to discuss, including the latest on Tyreek Hill. Cam Newton, this is a nice follow-up to a story we talked about last week. Cam Newton throwing a football tomorrow. We'll talk about that. The insane story regarding David Ortiz. It seems to be he's okay. He's in stable condition. He's going to make a quick recovery. But just a truly bizarre story. We'll talk about that a little later on. And Rafael Nadal continues to be unstoppable on clay. We'll get to all of that as the podcast rolls along here. But we'll start with the Raptors and a 3-1 lead that no one seems to be all that excited about.
We ain't do nothing yet. We haven't done anything. We won 3 games. It's the first of 4. We understand that they're the defending champs, and they're not going to go out easy. They're going to come and fight and prepare to play the next game, and that's how we're preparing ourselves. Like we have to, we got to prepare ourselves to play the next game. We haven't done anything yet.
You just got to be patient with it. Not really. We were 2 games away, 4 games away. It doesn't matter until you get that 4th win. We just have to stay confident in ourselves, be patient, don't try to rush things, and see how it plays out.
I just know we got to go win another game, and I've tried to do that all through the playoffs. Just look at the next game and go win it, and I imagine everything will take care of itself from there.
Kyle Lowry, Kawhi Leonard, and Nick Nurse right there discussing the Toronto Raptors' 3-1 lead after another dominant performance on Friday night. It led to an insane weekend of speculation regarding the Golden State Warriors. It's really been amazing, and we touched on this last week. No matter how good the Toronto Raptors are, no matter what they do, the conversation is still going to center around the Golden State Warriors, and I guess that's the luxury you earn when you've won 3 titles in the last 4 years, when you're looking to three-peat, when you're looking to do the things that the Golden State Warriors have done. The focus tends to be on whether you win or whether you lose. And it's more on the Golden State Warriors winning than it actually is on the Toronto Raptors winning. And I think, it's more on the Golden State Warriors losing than it is on the Toronto Raptors winning. And I think we're just now, after a 3-1 lead on a Friday night, I think we're just now starting to read some articles about how great this Toronto Raptors team is and how truly unique it is, and what an incredible job that Nick Nurse has done, what an incredible job that the Toronto Raptors have done with the load management of Kawhi Leonard coming off of his injury last year, how they have integrated Danny Green into the lineup, and how they have managed to build on a 59-win season last year. I was extremely critical of the Toronto Raptors, not only for firing Dwayne Casey, but for hiring someone on his staff. Because you hear so often, well, the franchise just needs a change of voice. They just need a change of voice and a new direction. And my feeling was, how different can it be when Nick Nurse has been in all those huddles? He's been in all those team meetings. He's been at all those shoot-arounds, all those practices, all those games. How much of a difference is Nick Nurse going to make? Well, apparently he's made a pretty big difference, as has Kawhi Leonard and Danny Green as well. But that didn't stop the speculation all weekend. Is there dissension among the Golden State Warriors? When is Kevin Durant's return coming? Is it coming? Kevin Durant's return has members of the Golden State Warriors confused. They're perplexed. They thought he was going to be back by now. Why isn't he back? My buddy Sam Amick over at The Athletic wrote, at the very least, Durant's absence that began back on May 8th is causing a mixture of confusion and angst among several of his teammates that simply can't be helpful to their overall cause. And again, that's Sam Amick of The Athletic. And it goes back this all goes back to the confrontation between Draymond Green and Kevin Durant, in which Draymond Green was suspended for a game for unprofessional conduct or conduct detrimental to the team or whatever the official, phrasing of that suspension was. But then we had lip readers all over the world saying Kevin Durant walked out of the huddle saying, that's why I'm out, that's why I'm leaving. And there was speculation, or not speculation, there were reports that Draymond Green said, that's why you a bitch. We don't need you. We won without you. And, of course, everybody is looking at this NBA Finals like, okay, you did win without him. You said you won without him. You talked a whole lot about winning without him, and you did all these various different things. But yet, here you are, and things aren't going well for you. The Golden State Warriors actually have a losing record without Kevin Durant in the NBA Finals. Since their run began back in the 2014-15 season under Steve Kerr, the win-loss record for the Golden State Warriors with Kevin Durant in the lineup is 8-1. Without Kevin Durant in the lineup, they're 8-9. That is an amazing stat. I heard somebody, I didn't hear it personally, I saw it on social media today on Twitter, that some of the radio show hosts in the Bay Area were saying if the Warriors lose, there needs to be a little asterisk next to this NBA Finals. And I thought, okay, I understand this is a fan base. This is home team coverage. They're frustrated. They're probably confused that they're down 3-1. And if you want to go ahead and, put a little asterisk next to it, that's fine. But I sure hope you intend on doing that with your 2015 NBA championship when LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers lost both Kevin Love and Kyrie Irving. Because I didn't hear anybody screaming about an asterisk then. I didn't hear anybody scream and say, well, the Golden State Warriors, they won, but it doesn't really count. Look at the way that the Cleveland Cavaliers played there in Game 1. LeBron James hits that shot. If LeBron James hits that shot at the end of regulation, Kyrie Irving doesn't get hurt because he got hurt in overtime. Is that series different? Because I didn't hear anybody screaming foul about that. Because we liked the Warriors at the time. That's when the Warriors were still baby faces. We liked the Warriors at the time. They were new. They were fresh. They were up-and-coming NBA superstars. They were a team that we could root for. It was somewhere the following season when they just couldn't lose and they were marching towards that 73-win regular season that they turned heel. People turned against them. All right, this is too much. We're not digging this anymore. Steph and the little shimmy, that's obnoxious. And Draymond Green and his demeanor. Yeah, I can't handle this. And then they got Kevin Durant in the ultimate heel move. Okay. They've kind of sealed their fate since then. In terms of the casual NBA fan rooting for or against them. So when the casual NBA fan sees or hears that people, professionals in the Bay Area, are screaming for them, oh yeah, this doesn't really count. I mean, even if the Warriors lose, like they need to make note that Kevin Durant wasn't around. Klay Thompson came back from an injury, played spectacular on the offensive end, by the way. And what Kevon Looney did on Friday night is just insane. Like the reports were that he had a broken collarbone, and then the reports were that he had a fracture near his collarbone. None of that to me sounds like he should be playing basketball. But yet, somehow, and I think they made it pretty clear how, he took a needle before the game and was able to get through a lot of discomfort that he would have been feeling otherwise. And I can't imagine what he felt like when whatever was in that needle wore off. But I thought what Looney and Klay Thompson did was truly remarkable. And even to a certain degree, what Andre Iguodala has been doing throughout the course of this NBA Finals as well. I think what those guys have done is truly, truly impressive. But it magnifies the Kevin Durant situation a little bit more because you're looking at it like, well, if Klay did it, and because he's got a calf strain, right? It doesn't sound, I mean, what sounds worse? A calf strain or a fracture near your collarbone? One sounds significantly worse than the other. One guy didn't miss any time. The other guy has been out since May 8th. I'm not equating those two injuries. I'm not saying we should judge Kevin Durant and his timetable and all that different stuff based off of when Kevon Looney came back from an entirely different injury. But the sound of it is different. Klay Thompson missed one game. Team lost. Team needed him. Came right back and played. He was ready to play. You could see him. He was sulking on the sidelines. He wanted to play so bad. Well, you don't see that from Kevin Durant. And now there's this constant, and part of it is because there's this constant chatter about what's going to happen with Kevin Durant next year. There's this constant chatter about Kevin Durant's relationship with his teammates because of his impending free agency and because of the incident that happened with Draymond Green earlier in the year. So there are all these subplots. There are all these little storylines, and they all center around Kevin Durant. They all center around relationships, when the fact of the matter is this: as impressive as the Golden State Warriors' win-loss record was without Kevin Durant during the regular season and some postseason games, it pales in comparison to what it has been in the NBA Finals. 8-1 when Kevin Durant is in the lineup. 8-9 when he is not. And that's including years that he wasn't on the team. So all of these articles, all of these conversations about the Warriors being better without Kevin Durant, I hope everyone who wrote an article or did a talk show or did an interview segment, you have to realize how foolish you sounded having that conversation. One of the best players on the planet, and you're questioning whether the team is better without him because they beat the Portland Trailblazers. With all due respect to the Portland Trailblazers, no one thought they were going to beat Oklahoma City. To their credit, they did, and that's fantastic. And they kept moving. They kept moving along. They got to the the Western Conference Final. They did all that. That's fantastic. Did anybody think that the Golden State Warriors were going to lose with or without Kevin Durant to the Portland Trailblazers? No, man, nobody did. Nobody did. But here we are on the cusp. And you look at Game 3. Game 3 had its moments where you're looking at it from whether you're just a basketball fan or the Warriors fan going, this is exactly what we needed. If you're a Warriors fan, you watched that game going, this is what we needed. You had the fast start. You had the runs. You had a double-digit lead. You had all of that. But you weren't able to sustain it. You weren't able to hold on to it. You had a tremendous performance. We got to have the Splash Brothers, man. Steph Curry, he did it all by himself a couple of nights ago. The team still lost. We've got to have them both. Okay. You got them both. You got Steph and you got Klay. Just 42 minutes from Klay Thompson. I can't get over how incredible that is, and the fact that he shot 11 of 18 from the field and 6 of 10 from the three-point line, from behind the three-point line with a bum hamstring is just amazing. 27 for Steph, 28 for Klay. Draymond hovering around a triple-double again. Didn't really work out with DeMarcus. You get what you need from Andre Iguodala, but the fact is that strength in numbers line, it's just not there. This isn't the team from 2015 that's 10 guys deep. This isn't even the team from 2016 that was 10 guys deep. This is an entirely different roster. And you're playing, DeMarcus Cousins is in a state where he has to start because Kevon Looney is playing with a fracture near his collarbone or whatever the official diagnosis is. But Kevon Looney played 20 minutes. DeMarcus Cousins only played 14. Everybody knows what a liability DeMarcus Cousins is on defense. But that is just a small, teeny tiny fracture of what's going on with the Golden State Warriors right now. The fact is, the strength in numbers moniker works fantastic for the 2018-19 Toronto Raptors. They're getting great performances from their starters. Pascal Siakam is playing like a star, an emerging NBA All-Star. Kyle Lowry didn't shoot particularly well in Game 4, but he has been I don't want to say he hasn't been a difference maker, but he hasn't been the frustrating Kyle Lowry of playoff series past. While he didn't shoot well in Game 4, he still had 7 assists. He was still an impactful player. And we use that word all the time here on the podcast. Used it on the radio show a lot. Impact. Go back to DeMarcus Cousins. DeMarcus Cousins is the sole reason that the Golden State Warriors have a 1 in the win column here in this series. And you look back at it and you go, well, you look at the box score going to DeMarcus Cousins. He didn't really have a spectacular game. Only made a couple of baskets. Yeah, he had some assists and rebounds, but every single thing that he did on the floor that day was impactful. But this Warriors team, Fred VanVleet getting a tooth knocked out, taking an elbow to the face, got blood dripping down his face, laying down there on the ground. This is the guy who's been tasked with guarding Steph Curry. He's been the sixth man for this roster, and he's made a major difference. And Nick Nurse has shortened up this rotation, man. Basically playing 7 to 8 guys, depending on the score, every single night. And it's working for him. And now we're headed into Game 4 tonight. Again, storylines abound. And, of course, you can't ignore the fact that, one, that the Golden State Warriors, people often forget about this, have come back from a 3-1 deficit. They did it against the Oklahoma City Thunder. The reason it doesn't get talked about very much is because the very next series, the Cleveland Cavaliers came back from a 3-1 deficit against the Golden State Warriors. Now, that is obviously this version of the Golden State Warriors. This is their greatest failure, blowing that 3-1 lead. Their greatest failure, not winning the NBA championship in a year that they set the NBA regular season wins record. It's also their greatest punchline. Like, it follows them. It follows this team. It follows this dynasty. Blowing that 3-1 lead to LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers. Getting Matthew Dellavedova a ridiculous contract when he left town. All because he guarded Steph Curry that series. So could they use that as motivation? Could they use that as, hey, one, we've done it before, and two, we've been on the receiving of it in the NBA Finals. 34 teams have been down 3-1 in the NBA Finals, and only one has come back to win the series. And now we're at a point where we've got to talk about the Toronto Raptors. Okay, they're 1 win away. It's a 3-1 series. That means the Toronto Raptors have to lose the next 3 games for the Golden State Warriors to be the NBA champions. Okay. It's conceivable to think that the Warriors can beat a team 3 times in a row. I mean, most people thought that the Warriors were going to beat the Toronto Raptors 4 times in a row, or they thought it was going to be a gentleman's sweep. Well, it turns out you might be right, just not the team that you thought would be gentlemanly swept is going to be swept. Or gentleman. Where did that term come from? Where did a gentleman's sweep come from? Like, what is that? Like, you're a gentleman and you let the team win one? Where did that come from? Somebody send me that. Oh, I should give you the text lines too. My bad. 916-888-5898. Text line went nuts immediately following Game 4, hoping for a Saturday show. Everybody was so psyched because I think the general NBA fan, I think most Sacramento Kings fans are rooting for the Warriors to lose. I don't think anybody has a vested interest in the Toronto Raptors. But they do in the Golden State Warriors losing. You have that feeling of something different. We're getting something different here if the Toronto Raptors win. But in order for the Golden State Warriors to win, they got to beat the Toronto Raptors 3 straight times. Toronto hasn't lost 3 games in a row since November. That's way back when the season started. And how about Nick Nurse? Again, I was critical of Nick Nurse. I was critical of the decision to hire Nick Nurse. I don't want to say I was critical of him as a coach because I really didn't know anything about him. I knew he was on the staff, which, as I stated earlier, it just confused me to fire a coach that had won 59 games in the regular season. He ultimately went on to win the Coach of the Year after he was fired. To bring in a guy on his staff and think, well, this is going to be the difference maker. I just didn't understand. But Nick Nurse is 1 win away from becoming the 9th head coach to win a championship in his very first season. Now, check out the names that have done it most recently, at least. Ty Lue in 2016. Steve Kerr the year before in 2015. Pat Riley did it with the Lakers as well as Paul Westhead. Then you got to go back to the 50s and the 40s to get into the last time it was done. In all, 5 different Toronto Raptors have scored 20 points in a game in the 2019 NBA Finals. The last time a team had 5 different 20-point scorers in the NBA Finals was in 2013 when both the Spurs and the Miami Heat did that. We've gotten a little bit of update here on Kevin Durant as Kevin Durant, of course, practiced on Sunday. He went through shoot-around here on Monday morning, and Steve Kerr said he has been upgraded. He is now a game-time decision for tonight's Game 5. Steph Curry talked about the Golden State Warriors' mindset right now.
Until the final buzzer sounds and somebody gets the 4 wins, we still, have life and have an opportunity to win. So, like Klay said, nobody's going to feel sorry for us at all. It's just a matter of can we get it done or not. And we're going to leave it all out there, starting on Monday.
And Monday is today, and I want to hold off on this discussion for just a little bit. But I do want to put it out there in your head because I feel like this is going to be a topic of conversation if the Toronto Raptors win tonight. What does this do to how we think about Steph Curry? Because we just gave you the record for the Golden State Warriors in the NBA Finals with and without Kevin Durant. So this was Steph Curry's team, and I think it's unfair for him to take all of the criticism because, as we've laid out, this isn't the depth. This team doesn't have the depth that the 2015 and 16 teams had. Not even close. Sure, you've got a version of DeMarcus Cousins on the roster. Sure, you've got Kevin Durant here. Obviously, he hasn't played since May 8th. But you look at it on the surface and you go, well, you've still got Draymond. You've still got Klay. You still got Steph. They're all-stars. You've still got Andre Iguodala, who hit the shot in Game 2 that secured the victory for the Golden State Warriors, former Finals MVP. You still got all that. So on the surface, you believe they should do it. Like, look, their starting lineup, when healthy, is full of all-stars / Olympians. Like that's an all-NBA team right there, starting lineup. But it's a version of DeMarcus Cousins. It's an older Andre Iguodala. And the depth isn't there, so I think it's entirely unfair to put all of the criticism on Steph Curry, but you know how basketball is. Basketball titles belong to an individual. Like LeBron James. Those are LeBron James titles. It wasn't the Cleveland Cavaliers went to 4 straight NBA Finals, and the Miami Heat went to 4 straight NBA Finals. It was LeBron James took his team to 4 straight, and then he did it again, and he took his team to 4 straight. So LeBron James, he has been to 8 straight NBA Finals. One guy, his team. We used to argue over who deserves the credit for the early 2000 Laker championships. Well, it doesn't even count for Kobe. How could you even consider Kobe the greatest? Those are Shaq's championships. Kobe just rode along with him. And then as Shaq's career started to wind down and Kobe was still really good winning titles, suddenly, for whatever revisionist history reason, the narrative shifted a little bit, and it was, well, Kobe's got 5. I mean, Kobe's got 5 titles. Like, he was just as big of a part of Shaquille O'Neal, if not a bigger part than Shaquille O'Neal was for those early 2000 Laker championships. But that's what we do in basketball. We characterize a championship or a season as down to one individual. And maybe Steph Curry isn't that individual that we could throw this down to. And people are going to point to the fact that he hasn't won an NBA Finals MVP. He's won 2 NBA regular season MVPs, but he's never won an NBA Finals MVP. And for some reason, that's a topic of conversation. And I get it, because we compare everything to Michael Jordan. Everything is compared to Michael Jordan. Well, Michael Jordan's 6-0, so LeBron can go to the finals 9 straight times, but unless he's 9-0, he's not in the conversation. Kobe Bryant, he lost championships twice. He lost to Detroit, he lost to Boston. Detroit and Boston. He's not even in the conversation. You got to go 6-0. You got to go 6-0, and you've got to win 6 NBA Finals MVPs, just like Michael Jordan did. You've got to do it the way Michael Jordan did, or it doesn't count. But that's what we do, right? Those were Jordan's titles. Not Scotty's, not Dennis's, or Horace Grant's or John Paxson's or Steve Kerr's. They're all Jordans. So who do by that theory, who do these NBA titles belong to that the Golden State Warriors have? Because the first year, it very much felt like 2015 very much felt like a makeup, like a team. People, basketball fans, loved the Golden State Warriors team. And as we mentioned, that heel turn happened somewhere during the 73-win season. And then they didn't win that year. And then Kevin Durant comes along. Wins the NBA Finals MVP twice. As beloved as Steph Curry is in the Bay Area, if you have to categorize those two titles, they go to one player, who do they go to? They go to Kevin Durant. Like that's always my argument with people who say Kevin Durant was chasing a ring. Kevin Durant doesn't chase rings because when Kevin Durant goes to a team, he's immediately the best player on the team. When he joined the Golden State Warriors, he was the best player on the Golden State Warriors. When you join a team and you're the best player, you're not chasing rings. David West, yeah, he's chasing rings. When you give up millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars, like David West did, to play with a championship contender, you're chasing. And that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. There are people who applaud Vince Carter for not signing with, the Warriors or whatever, team that had a chance to win a championship and say, oh, he's not chasing rings. He just wants to get out there and play basketball. Chasing rings isn't a bad thing. If you can get one, because that's how we judge players, right? We judge them on whether they've won rings. Now, we'll talk about it in history differently. If somehow the Golden State Warriors were able to come back and win this series in Game 7, is anybody talking about DeMarcus Cousins in the ring that he won? Now, I just said he is the reason that they won Game 1 of the NBA Final, or Game 2, of the NBA Finals. And I was quick to say, oh, watch out. If DeMarcus Cousins is the deciding factor, are we looking at a situation where DeMarcus Cousins wins the NBA Finals MVP? And of course, that got shut down really quick the next game and has been shut down ever since then. But are we looking at that the same? Are we looking at DeMarcus Cousins got a ring? Does anybody know for sure how many rings Robert Horry has or Steve Kerr? They're impressive numbers, but does anybody care? Because no one looks at, everybody knows the big shots that Robert Horry hit. But no one looks at Robert Horry going, he is the reason that they won NBA championships. He may be the reason that they won games to get to the NBA championship. He may be the central figure in a particular moment along the road to an NBA championship. But no one looks at those guys and go, they are the reason. Steve Kerr has one of the biggest shots in the history of the Chicago Bulls. No one looks at Steve Kerr and goes, well, he's the reason that the Chicago Bulls won. You can look with data now and say that the reason the Golden State Warriors have won at least 2 of their 3 championships was because Kevin Durant. You could make an argument. I think it's a bad one, personally. I want to make that clear. This is a bad argument, but you could make it that the Warriors won their first title because the Cavs' second and third best player were hurt. So how does this shape, because we use the term legacy all of the time, how does this shape Steph Curry's legacy? How does this shape the legacy of this Golden State Warriors dynasty that we're talking about? And what does it all mean? Like if Kevin Durant walks next year, goes to play with somebody else, and everybody seems to be certain that he's going to do that, how do we look at this Warriors team? Do we have to wait to see what they do? We can't. As a matter of fact, we can't wait to see what they do next year because that's not how sports media works. We have to react immediately. We got to go to Twitter with our hot take. We got to go to our radio show with our hot take. We've got to go to our podcast with our hot take. So I'm going to throw that question to you. And we'll revisit it later because I have my feelings on the game tonight, and I'll share them with you later on. If you're listening to this podcast or you're streaming it on YouTube, whatever time of day it is, shoot me a note. Let me know you're listening. It's our 24/7 text line at 916-888-3888. 5898. Again, that is area code 916-888-5898. That text comes right to me each and every single day. I know I said this earlier, but it's worth just throwing out there once again as we prepare for Game 5 tonight in Toronto. An incredibly gutty performance from Kevon, Looney, Klay Thompson, and even Andre Iguodala. I'm really, really looking forward to this game tonight. And those guys deserve a lot of credit for what they were able to do, even though the Warriors fell short in that game, knowing how desperately that team needed to win that game. Kevon Looney was done. Like, he was supposed to be finished for the NBA Finals, and no one was looking sideways at that. When at first it was a fractured collarbone, and then it was a fracture near the collarbone. Nobody was looking sideways at that. But somehow, knowing how desperately the team needed him defensively, he was able to play significant minutes in game number 3. Again, you want to be a part of the show. A number of ways you could do it. I just gave you the text line there, 916-888-5898. If you're unfamiliar with the podcast here, we're a daily sports podcast. We try to post every day at 12. We might have some days this week where we experiment a little bit and post it earlier. We're only a week into this thing, man. We expect it to continue to evolve. You could reach out to me across all social media platforms and connect with me across all social media platforms if you have not yet. At Damien Barling on Twitter, at Damien Barling on Instagram, and Damien Barling on Facebook as well. David Ortiz, this was a weird, as the kind of my night was winding down last night, putting the finishing touches on some of the notes for the podcast today, you get just one of those weird alerts. It says breaking: David Ortiz shot in the Dominican Republic. And that's all it says. It's like, okay, wait a minute. Is he okay? It didn't say he's dead. I assumed immediately he wasn't dead because the alert didn't say that. But it said nothing about like the status of his injury. Like, is he going to be okay? Like, how serious is this? How did this happen? And then as the details start to come out, one of them was, judging by the surveillance video, this can't possibly be accurate, but said he was shot in an attempted robbery. But the video, that was the initial report. That was the very, very, very first alert that David Ortiz was shot in the Dominican Republic during an attempted robbery. But the video, that doesn't match up at all, because if you saw the video, you see an individual like ride up on a bike of sorts, and he just shoots Ortiz right in the back. And, the guy is taken down and beaten by everybody, surrounding David Ortiz. Ortiz is attended to. He was in the hospital, I think, for 6 hours, had some intestines removed, gallbladder removed. He has some kidney damage, but the reports are, at least the latest reports that we've gotten, are David Ortiz is expected to recover quickly after being shot last night. What were the motives behind this? Like, I'm so... Just if it wasn't for the video, it would just be one of those things that you read about and you go, gosh, this is a horrible story. You'd follow Ortiz's recovery and kind of go from there. But adding the video component to it, it's like, what is happening in this video? Because he shot him so close, at such close range. It was like, if you raise the gun an inch, you're shooting him in the head. Like, what were you trying to kill him? Like, what was happening in this? I don't know why I'm trying to get inside the mind of a person who shot somebody. But just the video component of this made this... Obviously, it's already a strange story. But the video just made it significantly more head-scratching. But again, the latest reports are David Ortiz is going to be okay, and he is expected to make a quick recovery. Despite that very, very lengthy surgery, and despite the fact that he is heavily sedated and will be in intensive care for the next 24 hours. The Cup was in the building for Game 6 of the Stanley Cup Final, and the Cup will be in the building for Game 7 as the Bruins forced a Game 7 by defeating the Blues 5-1. It's the first time since 2011 that the Stanley Cup Final will go to 7 games. That year, the Bruins defeated the Canucks 4-0 in Game 7 after winning Game 6 by the score of 5-2. This will be the 17th Game 7 in Stanley Cup Final history. Home teams are 12-4 all time, but they've lost each of the last two. The Bruins have never hosted a Game 7 in the Stanley Cup Final. The last time any Boston team from the NHL, the NBA, or Major League Baseball hosted a Game 7 was the 1984 NBA Finals when the Celtics beat the Los Angeles Lakers. A story that you probably weren't paying a ton of attention to. I don't know how many tennis fans there are out there, but man, when there is greatness, you've got to pay attention to it. Rafael Nadal is great. He struggled for the briefest of moments in the second set on Sunday before locking down 16 of the next 17 points in 12 of the remaining 14 games to beat Dominic Thiem 6-3, 5-7, 6-1, and 6-1 for his record-extending 12th championship at the French Open. Rafa is 12-0, never lost at Roland Garros in the finals. He does not lose Australian Open finals. So much to the fact his win-loss record is 93-2. He lost to Robin Soderling in 2009, and he lost to the Joker in the quarterfinals of 2015. He does not lose very often. 93-2 at Roland Garros. It feels like Rafa's old. It feels like Rafael Nadal is getting up there, and we're talking about the twilight of his career and all. Dude, he is 33 years old. 33 years, 6 days. That makes him the third oldest man in the Open era to win the French Open. That is incredible to me. Absolutely incredible. But it's a young man's game, right? It's a young man's sport. It's a young person's sport, men or women. And guys like Rafa and Roger and Serena, they kind of defy that. But really, just an impressive performance from Rafael Nadal. There was an interesting story on Bleacher Report as well about the Los Angeles Lakers last year and Rajon Rondo. It was so funny to me. Rondo was on one of the shows. I think it was NBA Countdown, because I don't think NBA Countdown is that good. That's the one with Beetle and Paul Pierce and I think Jalen Rose is on that show. Rajon Rondo was on that show, and I feel like they didn't talk to him about the Lakers, which I understand that Rajon Rondo has a fantastic basketball mind, but if you have him on your set, why don't you talk to him about the Los Angeles Lakers? But for whatever reason they didn't. Bleacher Report did, and they got a little insight to what went on last season. Rajon Rondo told Bleacher Report, every guy on our team, LeBron was their favorite player growing up. Everyone had the shoes, his jersey. You're the biggest fan in the world. It's like you're playing with MJ, and then you get there. It's like your mom and your dad or the person you looked up to, idolized you, doesn't want you. And then to have that sitting in your gut, not knowing what was going on. Obviously, he's talking about the Anthony Davis trade rumors right there. This falls in line, though, with what Lonzo Ball said. As we mentioned, if you are familiar with The Lowdown, the radio show I used to do, we talked about the shop, the episode of The Shop with LeBron and Lonzo, and the remarks that got all of the run, and I get it, was Magic and to an extent Lonzo, but mostly LeBron James talking about Magic Johnson and not getting a call from Magic and not liking the way that Magic handled his resignation and all of that. But I thought there was a really telling point at the very, very beginning of the episode when Lonzo was talking about playing with LeBron for the first time and not knowing how to say hi to him, not knowing how to say anything to him because of what Rajon Rondo said in the Bleacher Report interview. Every guy idolized him. They loved him growing up. The shoes, the jersey. They wanted to pattern their game after LeBron. Like, that's what Lonzo said. And that feeling of, I love this guy. He's my favorite player in the world. Oh, but wait a minute. He doesn't want me on this team? He wants to dump me? And I think anybody who said that the Anthony Davis trade rumors didn't affect the Los Angeles Lakers it's crazy. That's absolutely nuts to me. Because just as a human, that's difficult to digest. You could talk about making millions of dollars. You could talk about being professional. You could talk about Magic Johnson going on TV when the trade was obvious, when the trade deadline had come and gone, and Magic had nothing to lose at this point. He goes out on TV and says, "Oh, well, you've got to be a professional. Everybody's dealt with it." Oh, for real? Did you? Did Dr. Buss ever talk about trading you? Okay, no, you haven't dealt with it. That's why I always crack up when I hear guys who have never dealt with trade rumors come out and talk about them. Like LeBron James. Well, we've all got to deal with it. No, you don't. Nobody's talking about trading LeBron James. Nobody's talking about trading Magic Johnson. So you don't know what it's like. It's probably the one part of the basketball business that you have no clue what it's like to be around. LeBron James has been in the league how many years now? 16? For 16 straight seasons, LeBron James has not been the subject of a single trade rumor. How many years was Magic Johnson in the league? 11? 11 or 12? 11 or 12 years, Magic Johnson was not the subject of a trade rumor. Both of those guys had enough clout to get coaches fired. In some cases, multiple coaches. So to say, oh, you've got to be professional. Oh, everybody goes through this. Oh, you've got to deal with it this way. You've got to deal with it that way. Man, that's crazy. Now, Lonzo Ball can step up in a year or two and say, hey, you've got to deal with it. Even to a certain degree, Rajon Rondo can. There are players in the league who can say, you've got to try to deal with it. Here's how you got to get past it. Here's what you got to do. Rudy Gay can talk about it. Guys that can't, LeBron, Magic, Jordan can't talk about it. Larry Bird can never talk about it. Kevin Durant can't talk about it. Those guys' names have never been brought up in trade rumors. You know who might be able to? Chris Paul can talk about it. Chris Paul can talk about it now because his name is probably going to be involved in a lot of trade rumors over this offseason and perhaps leading all the way up until February. But unless you've dealt with that, man, you can't talk about it. And I can't imagine how guys like Brandon Ingram were feeling. Remember, these guys are young. Lonzo Ball, this was a really young team. You're just getting ready to dump them all to try to get Anthony Davis. Now, from an outsider's perspective, I get it. I don't know how any of those guys felt. I mean, no basketball player feels like another one is better than them. At least I would imagine they don't. I'm sure Brandon Ingram is thinking, man, let me develop. Watch what a monster I become. There is a reason Magic wouldn't trade me for DeMarcus Cousins. There was a reason Magic Johnson wouldn't include me in any trade packages. Watch what a beast I become. Lonzo Ball, same thing. Wait till I get healthy. Watch what a beast I become. I see the floor better than anybody out there. No one's going to recognize. Like, we on the outside go, come on, guys, this is Anthony Davis. Like, come on, you gotta understand it. Who's going to think that? These guys are the most competitive people on the planet. Nobody's going to think that. Rajon Rondo went on to say, quote, I can't say a name, but I remember me and the guy were on the bench for the Atlanta game right before the All-Star break. The guy was cussing and talking bad about the situation during the game. I was like, man, snap out of it. Shit is over. We'll get through it. As vets, we have to move forward and not focus on what the young guys are focusing on. So he was saying there that even some of the veterans were affected. Lance Stevenson, other guys like that were on the roster. That was such an odd mix of, I can't wrap my brain around the people, the very smart NBA minds out there who thought that Laker experiment was going to work. I didn't see it. It was there were like three different versions of the Los Angeles Lakers. There was LeBron, and then there was the young Lakers, and then there were the veteran Lakers. And it felt like none of them were mixing. Do I think LeBron James' injury on Christmas Day played a major factor into their downfall? No. And that's not trying to fire the hot take cannon. Like, I don't. Maybe to the drastic level in which they fell off, sure. But do I think they were in fourth? Like, that's the line everybody goes to. Remember when LeBron got hurt on Christmas Day, the Los Angeles Lakers were fourth. Okay, you really think the Lakers were going to stay in fourth the entire year? You think they were going to stay 4th through those rough months of post All-Star game action in February and March when LeBron usually mails it in? You thought they were going to stay 4th that whole time? Oh, man, they weren't. And you can look back at the win-loss record then. You could look back at the play at the time of that Christmas game. Their play started to fall off 2 weeks prior to that. Or, I'm sorry, a week prior to the Christmas Day game. It turned out to be 2 weeks prior before the Anthony Davis rumors started. So it's easy to pinpoint. It's easy to go back to that injury on Christmas Day and the fact that they beat up the Golden State Warriors and say, see, everything that the Lakers were doing was working. But I solely disagree with that. I hated the makeup of the team, and I think LeBron's injury only magnified what was ultimately going to happen anyways. Maybe they wouldn't have fallen that far out of it. Maybe they would have been competing for a playoff spot there in the final weeks and the final days and the final games of the regular season. But my money's on no. I don't think that would have happened. Ja Morant visited the Memphis Grizzlies yesterday. That's good because I think Ja Morant is going to play for the Memphis Grizzlies next year. We mentioned this at the top of the show. 4-time NBA champion and 6-time NBA All-Star Tony Parker announced his retirement today after 18 seasons. I hate that he played a season with Charlotte. I know everybody is going to forget, but at some point, somebody is going to do a career retrospective on him. They're going to do a video for him, and they're going to do something, and there's just going to be this odd still shot of Tony Parker wearing a Charlotte Hornets jersey. And Tony Parker, I assume, is a Hall of Famer. But this officially marks the end of that San Antonio Spurs Big Three era. I know, obviously, none of them were on the Spurs last year. But, you know, Ginobili's retired and Duncan's retired. And now Tony Parker officially announces his retirement today. 701 wins for that team. 701 for that group of Big Three San Antonio Spurs. And what's amazing about that stat, what's amazing about that Big Three, what's amazing about all that is the fact that they're still the next era of San Antonio Spurs was supposed to be Kawhi Leonard. And it didn't work. So you usher out Kawhi, you bring in DeMar DeRozan, you still got LaMarcus Aldridge, and there was a time during this 2018-19 campaign where the hottest team in the NBA was the San Antonio Spurs. There was a time where the San Antonio Spurs were finally out of the playoff mix. And it was like, okay, maybe, just maybe, we have finally come to an end of this Spurs dynasty. Maybe we finally come to this end. And then they reel off like 10 straight wins. They reel off like 15 of 16 wins. And suddenly you're talking about the Spurs being the best and most dangerous team in the NBA. And that's a credit to R.C. Buford and obviously a credit to Greg Popovich as well. Another note from the weekend, this happened.
And Muncy hammers one to right field. This ball headed over the landing and into McCovey Cove for a home run. Max Muncy with his 13th home run of the season. It is 1-0 Dodgers.
God, I can't even say it with a straight face. I was going to say the more I think about it, you got to just let the kids play. That's what everybody's saying, but I can't. They want to let everybody be themselves and letting me be myself. That's me, you know. I'd just as soon fight than walk or whatever. So just do your thing. I'll do mine.
I hit the ball and then he yelled at me. He said, "Don't watch the ball, you run." And I just responded back, you know, if you don't want me to watch the ball, you can go get it out of the ocean. You know, he kept mouthing off. I told him come get it, but you know, he's a competitor. He was just fired up about it. I definitely hope this doesn't turn into a Puig thing because I don't want that on my shoulders. But just him competing out there, and you know, he was upset he made a bad pitch, and that's all there was.
It's a call from the Dodgers Radio Network. Of course, that was Mad Bum and Max Muncy as well to follow there on that clip. I think I'm going to post this question tomorrow on the different social media platforms, but Madison Bumgarner has to rank up there with the most sensitive athletes in sports. Because this seems to be a reoccurring theme with Mad Bum. And I feel like if we were to seed the top 2 most sensitive athletes, or if we were to seed the most sensitive athletes in sports, I feel like the top 2 would be Madison Bumgarner and Kevin Durant. And I'm sure there are some obvious ones that I'm leaving out. So I want to post that on our Facebook page tomorrow. But the video of it is great. Because by the way, that was the one bad pitch Mad Bum made the entire game. Like, that was a 1-0 win for the Dodgers. That was a flawless performance. Well, close to flawless performance from Madison Bumgarner. And he was super in his feelings when Max Muncy hit that out. And that's one of the things that cracks me up about baseball. Because you heard Mad Bum acknowledge it there. You got to let the kids play. You got to let them be kids. Let them do the thing. Let them have fun. And it's cool if you want to react like that, but he's right. You do. This is my biggest gripe with baseball is they don't want it to be fun. It's the one sport more than any other that you have to let be fun. You have to let it evolve. You have to let it turn into something new. Because baseball is so old. It's so antiquated. It hasn't caught up with the social media era. It hasn't caught up with the social media world. It has to. You have to get people's attention. Like there was that, I read the story. I didn't take full notes on it, so apologies for this. Maybe the guy was in Milwaukee, or maybe he was covering the Brewers or something, but the reporter who was tweeting out pictures of a kid who was sitting, I think, front row on the third base side, or front row on one of the sides there, and he was on his phone, and the reporter's just trashing him, and it had the total opposite effect of what he was trying to accomplish, because he got ripped apart on social media for trying to call out that kid for being on his phone when obviously he was on his phone tweeting about the kid being on his phone. Baseball is a tough game to hold your attention. You hear people say this all the time. One of the great things about baseball is being at the ballpark, being outside, the smell of baseball. You have baseball diehards who love watching every second of the game. You have baseball diehards that, keep their own scorecard. Dude, that's awesome. I just think those people are few and far between. Some people just like being at the ballpark, getting a hot dog and a beer. Man, that's cool. If they want to Instagram story that they're at the ballpark getting a beer and a hot dog, great. Shouldn't be any judgment to that. There's just has to be ways to make baseball more fun. Allow them to be characters. Mad Bum, as highly sensitive as he is, he's a character. With that voice and that delivery, I watched A Star is Born this weekend. That's a fantastic movie. And I really didn't think I was going to like it, but Bradley Cooper killed that movie. It was so good. It was really, really good. Mad Bum sounds like a character out of that movie. Like he sounds like, Bradley Cooper's manager in that movie. This is the voice and the delivery that he has. Like, he's the perfect endorser for the truck company that he's got out here. Just perfect. But he's a character. And that's what baseball needs. Baseball needs more characters. Not just villains like Bryce Harper. I feel like Bryce Harper has become such a villain, people root for him to fail. Like he tried to steal home yesterday and got thrown out. Like, don't root for guys to fail. Root for guys to be characters. If you little bat flip once in a while, watching a pitch that went, 400 some odd feet into McCovey Cove, hell yeah. And then if Mad Bum gets in his feelings about it, great. It's all that more entertaining. All that much more entertaining, because that's what baseball needs. Baseball needs entertainment outside of the balls, the strikes, the hits, the RBIs, the WAR, all of those different things. You need to have something else to latch on to. Mad Bum is a personality. As sensitive as he may be, Max Muncy's a personality. David Ortiz, who we talked about earlier, and the terrible situation going on with him, he was a personality. He was a guy that you could latch on to and enjoy and like. That's why he's not the most eloquent speaker, but why do you think the Red Sox marched him out there after the Boston Marathon bombing? Because he was genuine. He was genuine, and he was a character that they knew people would attach to. And he did. He had the most defining line of the Boston Marathon, recovery time. This is our effing city. Yo, that was Poppy. That was the character that he was. It worked for them. It worked for baseball. Baseball has to continue to establish those. Adrian Wojnarowski tweeted today that the New Orleans Pelicans are pushing for multi-team trades to work out with Anthony Davis. They want it to be a multi-team trade because they want to acquire multiple assets to go along with who we all believe is Zion Williamson as the number 1 overall draft pick. Adrian Wojnarowski wrote today for ESPN, according to front offices who've engaged in conversations with David Griffin, he hasn't sounded convinced that one team is likely to fulfill the wishes for a Davis deal. To that end, Griffin has been working to find multi-team trade scenarios that could redirect assets for players or picks more preferable to the Pelicans. Pelicans also made news today in hiring Swin Cash as the vice president of basketball operations and scouting. I'm pretty familiar with Swin Cash and her time in the WNBA, and she's moved on to be an analyst, I believe, on NBA TV. And this is something that Adam Silver has pushed for. He has pushed for more women to be involved in the front office, and he has pushed for more women to be involved on coaching staffs and on broadcast as well. And I hope this first wave of women is the right women. I don't know a lot about, I don't believe you hire a woman just for the sake of hiring a woman. I don't know, as well as I know Swin Cash, I don't know what her basketball acumen is in terms of the NBA. I don't know, she's in charge of scouting now. She's played with some pretty great players. She played a role in the Detroit Shock winning multiple championships. She played a major role in UConn winning championships when she was back at the University of Connecticut. So an interesting hire. I'm sure we'll dig deeper into this as the week rolls along. If you want to be a part of the show, 916-888-5898. That is the 24/7 text line. It does not matter what time you are listening to this podcast. If you want to jump in with your thoughts and send them to me just as you used to do the radio show, please do that. 916-888-5898. If social media is more of your preference, it's at Damien Barling on Twitter, at Damien Barling on Instagram, and just search Damien Barling on Facebook as well. I love to interact and engage with everyone who listens to the show. I'm so appreciative of all of you who have taken the time to seek this out, whether it's in podcast form on Apple Podcast, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, whatever it is, or if you're streaming it over there on YouTube. If you haven't yet, make sure you subscribe on YouTube. We're going to be doing some video stuff here in the coming weeks. We're going to be going live, so make sure you set your notifications to go off as well when that Damien Barling channel goes live. And if you subscribed on whatever podcast platform you are on, if you could take 2 seconds, it's not even 2 seconds, it's a split second to just rate the show, whether it's 4 stars, 5 stars, 3 stars, whatever you think this show is worth. Just take the split second to hit that number of stars. And if you have an extra 60 to 120 seconds, please leave a review as well. So many of you have been so grateful in doing that through the first week of this podcast. And I was really nervous going through that first week. But after seeing how many of you have supported this new venture, man, I couldn't be more excited about what we got going on here. Tyreek Hill, back in the news, I guess, sort of. I guess he's back in the news for not really being in the news. Prosecutors in Johnson County, Kansas, are not actively working a criminal investigation into possible child abuse involving Tyreek Hill. It's not an active investigation, said the district attorney, as in any case, if we receive additional evidence, we will reevaluate. I know many people thought the downfall of Tyreek Hill and his relationships with the Kansas City Chiefs was going to happen when that 11-minute piece of audio came out involving a conversation with, I guess it's his wife. It's the woman who he was, he had a domestic incident with when she was pregnant back in college, right before he entered the NFL, and there was a situation with his son. She was accusing him of breaking their son's arm, and and everyone said, well, this is it. This is the smoking gun. Tyreek Hill's gone. If you listen to the 11-minute audio, she was very obviously trying to get him to say something that he never said. He never admitted to doing anything, and he denied hitting his son. So if anything else, the audio does more to exonerate him when it comes to the child abuse charges. Now, in terms of the NFL, what caught the NFL's attention was, of course, the line where she says, he's terrified of you, and Tyreek Hill responds, you need to be terrified of me too, bitch. That was the line that probably caught the NFL's attention more than anything, because when you listen to the audio, there is nothing there that insinuates child abuse. As much as she is trying to get him to say something, he doesn't. And I said, I think this was back in April. I said back in April, the Kansas City Chiefs just went through this with Kareem Hunt. They saw what the Cleveland Browns did. There is no way they're going to cut Tyreek Hill. And here we are midway through June, and I'm still of the belief, barring an extraordinary change in circumstances, if we're just operating off of what we know now, the Kansas City Chiefs will not cut Tyreek Hill. Now, the NFL may act. The NFL may suspend him. The NFL may respond to either the "you should be scared of me" line, or just the fact that he's involved in another incident here with his domestic partner, with his wife. But that's not going to result, in my opinion, in the Kansas City Chiefs cutting him. And as much as people hate to hear this, he's too valuable. When we talk about the running back position all the time, NFL teams don't value that running back position anymore. As much of a stud as Kareem Hunt was, or is, I guess, as much of a stud as Kareem Hunt is, he's a running back. You believe you can get another running back to come in and do what Kareem Hunt did, or at least close to what Kareem Hunt did. You can't find someone else to do what Tyreek Hill does. And there is no bigger asset for the future of your franchise. There is no bigger asset for the guy who is going to sign the richest contract in NFL history next year. There is no bigger asset to Patrick Mahomes than Tyreek Hill and his breakout speed. Kansas City knows that. Andy Reid knows that. The Hunt family knows that. They'll put on the show. They'll do whatever they have to do. But barring a dramatic change in evidence, I'm still of the belief that I was back in April. There's no way he is not playing for the Kansas City Chiefs next year. Johnny Manziel has expressed interest in the XFL's new Houston team, saying he would relish the chance to play in his home state and be reunited with June Jones, who he worked with in the AAF. It's who he played with in the CFL. I'm starting to lose track of the franchises, of the organizations that Johnny Football has played for. Now, I'm going to go out on a limb here in that Johnny Manziel, I believe this is kind of a news-created headline, a news-created story, a media-created story, like there's nothing really to it. Johnny Manziel has interest in playing with the XFL. I'm going to go out on a limb and say Johnny Manziel has interest on playing with anyone who will let him play. If it's the XFL, great. I think there's a team in Houston. I think is there a team in Dallas too? I think there's a couple of teams there in Texas. Not that he only has to play in Texas, but I have to imagine any football league that is out there, Johnny Manziel would be interested in playing for him. I believe the dude just wants to play football again. As I think is true with Cam Newton as well. Cam Newton told ESPN last month that he had hoped there would be a time before the start of training camp, late next month, that he could throw following the rehabilitation of his shoulder surgery. Well, apparently, that time is tomorrow. We speculated last week whether Cam Newton would be ready. You heard from Ron Rivera, if you listened to the podcast last week, that Ron Rivera didn't seem super committal. He didn't seem really interested in talking about Cam Newton or anything pertaining to Cam Newton's rehab, or whether he has thrown a football yet, or whether he has done anything. Well, tomorrow, the Panthers begin a 3-day mandatory minicamp, And Cam Newton has said he's going to step out there and he's going to do some throwing drills. It's going to be the first time he has done any throwing drills since having his right shoulder operated on back in January. We're going to wrap things up here in just a moment. There's one more story I want to throw at you, and it's a follow-up to something you talked about on the radio show several months ago, and it's something that just continues to defy logic to me. It's a really frustrating story every time I see it. I'm an animal rights advocate, and I kind of go back and forth on how I feel about horse racing. But when I keep seeing what's going on at the Santa Anita racetrack, it's really infuriating. The California Horse Racing Board recommended that Santa Anita Park suspend racing for the remainder of the track season after another horse died on Saturday. It is the 28th fatality since December 28th. The 28th horse that has been killed since December 28th. Santa Anita denied that request. And apparently, despite the fact that they're named the California Horse Racing Board, there's nothing that they can do about it. 28 fatalities since December 28th. The first 22 horse deaths led to Santa Anita to close on March 5th, if you remember. They didn't reopen until March 29th. March 29th. 2 days after the track reopened, another horse died. Since May 18th, 5 more horses have died, including on Saturday. Why is this being allowed? In what other world would this be allowed? You go to the California State Fair this summer. You got a Ferris wheel that kills one person. Day one of the California State Fair, you got a Ferris wheel that kills one person. Does that Ferris wheel reopen? Imagine a situation where you had anything in this country, in this world, where 28 people died. Imagine having a track. Imagine running the track at Sac State. Imagine 28 people dying on that track. You think that track's still open to the public? You think that track is still open to anybody? The teacups at Disneyland, they kill one person. You think they open 2 days later? A week later? You think they open 20 days later? 20 days later, the teacups reopen. It kills 2 more people. You think they open it again? You think anybody is suggesting that Disneyland close the teacups? You think anybody is suggesting that the California State Fair shut down a Ferris wheel if it's killing people? Nope. They are demanding that they shut it down. But yet, nobody is demanding that the Santa Anita racetrack shut down. They're recommending. I think, I could be wrong. I was trying to follow up on this a little bit. Did Governor Newsom sign something that said he wants this track shut down? Who has the authority to say, hey, man, this ain't happening. We're shutting this bitch down. It's over. Y'all figure out what the hell is going on here. And when we are adequately accepting of that information, maybe we'll reopen it. But as of this moment, right now, another horse will not step foot on this track. How is nobody doing that? Why aren't there more people outraged by this? Why isn't this a bigger story? Why isn't this a bigger story in sports? A dude winning and losing on Jeopardy was a bigger story than this. 28 horses since December 28th. And yet the track just gets to operate like nothing's going on here. We're just going to keep it moving. It's disgusting, man. Absolutely disgusting. Any thoughts on today's show? Please check me out, 916-888-5898. You can email me, DamienBarling@me.com. I've given you the social media platforms. They're all there in the description of the show as well. That's at Damien Barling on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Kawhi Leonard became the 6th player with 14 30-point games in a single postseason. The others to do it, Michael Jordan, Hakeem Olajuwon, Kobe Bryant, Allen Iverson, and LeBron James. His 14 30-point playoff games have already matched DeMar DeRozan, who had 14 in his entire Raptors career. Here is one final note heading into tonight's Game 5. As we know, Kevin Durant is a game-time decision, but I think if the Toronto Raptors win tonight, Kawhi Leonard will likely be the NBA Finals MVP. It will be his second such award. He will join LeBron James and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar as the only players to win the NBA Finals MVP on 2 different franchises. My prediction for tonight, that's exactly what happens. I'm not surprised that the Warriors are on the verge of losing the NBA Finals. I'm surprised it's Toronto. As I outlined before, I thought it was going to be the Milwaukee Bucks, but the Toronto Raptors are here. They have played incredibly, and I think they close out the NBA Finals. I think they close out the NBA season, and I think they close out Kevin Durant's time with the Golden State Warriors tonight. KD's going to come back. It's what I love. Like, oh, Kevin Durant comes back. It's a whole new ball game. And everyone keeps saying, all they got to do is win this game and get back to Oracle. You get back to the friendly confines, your home arena, you get back there. Man, I'm sorry. How many games this series have the Golden State Warriors won at Oracle? Let's just all collectively think how many times the Warriors have won at Oracle this series. Oh, yeah. The answer is 0. Raptors close it out. They win a championship for all of Canada tonight. Thank you so much for downloading, for streaming, for listening. I greatly appreciate it. Whatever happens tonight in Game 5, we will be back to react to it tomorrow here on the podcast with Damien Barling.